Hello, Kate Mitchell. How are you doing?
Hello, Kelly. Hi, I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Relatively. I went to a 50th nephew's 50th birthday party last night, but I did leave early.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
We were out as well, actually. We went to some local singer-songwriters had done a concert about the Lincolnshire Bombers.
oh,
It's
yeah,
Bomber County. I live in Bomber County,
yeah,
and it was just coincidence that it was the night before Remembrance Sunday, but
yeah.
it was really good, really good.
Late
Yeah, the
night.
stories of the people.
Hmm,
Yeah.
hmm. You're a novelist, playwright, short story writer, often inspired by life as a probation officer.
That's true, yes.
But before
Yeah.
we talk about your writing, you tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, your background, the
Oh,
massively varied job career that you've had.
well, I was born in Macclesfield actually, but we didn't stay there for very long because my parents ran off into the hills
Yeah.
seeking
Oh,
seeking a better life. So we ended up in the Peak District, growing up in some fairly remote and barren places, and yeah, and they were smallholder farmers. So it was the highest village in England. I lived in the
oh
highest
yeah.
village in England for a period of time.
Yeah, no
Uh,
flooding there then.
a lot of snow, actually less snow now with climate change,
Yeah,
but at that time, back then, it was a very, very cold and wintry sort of place to live. Very bleak. I just remember it as being very bleak,
yeah.
and grew up there, and then left there the day after I left school at 16.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did some went back to Macclesfield actually to work,
Mm.
and then went to Switzerland to be an au pair when I was 18.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I mean, I come back to that because that had quite an influence on my reading, my writing.
Mm.
Yes, and what then came back, eventually went to London and worked with homeless people and found my way into the probation service.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and spent 30 years there.
Oh,
I don't think I expected to spend 30 years there. You kind of turn around and you think, oh my goodness,
yeah.
I've actually earned myself a pension.
Wow. You work now as a safeguard consultant. Is that part time? Is it?
I do actually, Terry. I don't know where you found that, but
Oh,
yeah, well done. It's actually a
spies.
form. It's, it's a form of professional writing where I review safeguarding incidents and write reports, and I've been doing that since I left the probation service several years ago.
Yeah.
So that's an important arm of my writing, really, doing the professional writing,
Yeah.
and I still do that. And yeah, it's interesting work.
Mm.
Just do it on a project basis. Of course, haven't done it during lockdown.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. So the also editing. I do some editing for an organisation called Care International,
Yeah.
and Care International has a microfinance arm, and I'm really proud to work with them because working with entrepreneurs in the
Yeah.
developing world to edit their business cases. So
Okay.
that's it's incredibly interesting. So
Yeah.
there's a kind of professional writing and editing arm to what I do, and then there's the fiction. Yeah.
I know you travel a great deal, don't you? I've seen. Well, we've been in touch, haven't we? For a couple of years on Facebook and Twitter. You've been
Yeah,
to New Zealand, Australia,
I
all around the
certainly
world.
have. Absolutely. Since yes, I've been around the world twice. I'm
Mm.
ashamed to say because I've now taken the flight-free pledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't flown for 2 years, and I have no intention of flying
Yeah.
in the future. So we're just organising. All our trips now have to be by train.
Yeah.
And so we're just organising our next trip to Sicily by train. We went to Moscow by train and bus and boat,
Yeah.
and back. It took us 21 days, but
Oh.
I mean, it's actually a much more exciting way to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. When I went to New Zealand, it took me about 3 weeks to get there. I think by flights. Longest journey of my life. The flight from Abu Dhabi to Sydney, I think, was about 14 hours. That was
It's
horrendous.
exhausting.
Awful. Yeah.
It is exhausting, and I think I think if you've got family abroad, or you've got reasons to travel and so on, then you've got to fly. You've got limited time. My daughter's partner's family's in Italy. They've got to fly. But that's the only way of getting there during the holiday. But I don't have to. I've got loads of time. I can my laptop. I can take my MacBook anywhere and work anywhere. Sit on the Trans-Siberian Railway, whatever. So I've got no excuse. But I do look forward to trying to organise a trip to Australia by ground. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'll be able to do that.
Well, how long does take a ship to get there?
That's
a couple of weeks.
Is it? Do ships still go? I suppose cruise ships do, but cruise ships are terrible things for the climate.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so travel over the next few years promises to be a bit more adventurous, really. Yeah.
How does that feed into your writing? Do you think travel, cliche, broadens the mind? Do you include elements of different places in your novels and your writing?
It does give you some interesting settings, and I know that a number of my short stories have been set in other locations. So, for instance, I have one set in which just came to me when I was sitting in an amphitheatre in Delphi. And just the short story just came to me. I heard somebody say, it was a guide, and her voice carried up to me, and I heard her say, the amphitheatre is the shape of the human ear, so that the sound travels around. And I thought, oh, what an intriguing idea. I could be sitting up here and I could hear something I'm not supposed to hear. So and there we had a story. So so the settings that I've found myself in have another one which won a competition was based on traveling to see the eclipse at the Faroe Islands. So most of my stories do have a it's interesting that you should say that, actually, Terry, because even while I'm saying that, it's occurred to me that a lot of my short stories are based in locations around the world, but my novels are actually based in places where I've lived and know really well. So Sheffield, Lincolnshire, the East Coast, it's places where I've lived for a long time and know the geography, although I fictionalise them for the purposes of writing. But that's interesting. So quick short stories tend to be more exotic. I've got another one in Madeira, and I think that had I not been there and travelled on the Teleferico, I would not have known that setting and that, So yes, I think it does broaden the scope. Although people, we can write about just what's around us wherever we are, can't we?
With your longer works of fiction, you write what you know, don't you? I think that must be in your comfort zone because you're totally familiar with these places and these characters and the way people talk.
Absolutely, and to get that rhythm. I mean, in a short story, you can do a quick kind of like vignette, a very short, But yes, you're right. I think in a novel, you really have to kind of get under the skin of the location. It's people say, don't they? It's a cliche. Location is a character. Setting is a character, and I think it does become a really important part. I would certainly say that in my first novel, The House Fell on Her Head, the setting, which is Sheffield during the Blitz, very, very much part of the character of the novel.
You can feel the Yorkshire accents. I've read this a couple of years ago. Can I just mention that we met on a writing retreat?
We did.
2017, was it? 16, 17?
Well, yes. And am I right in thinking you still owe me a pork pie, Terry?
I certainly do.
I seem to remember that you were so desperate for meat by the third day.
Yeah, it was a vegetarian diet, wasn't it? We were fed.
We had to drive to Llandudno Junction to get you a pork pie from Tesco.
I was starving.
So disappointing, wasn't it? It was a really not very nice pork pie.
I know, we're both actually. I think it was £4 for a pound, I think. No, but the food that we were given, it's I'm not a vegetarian, but it was a cabbage and a beetroot soup, raw cabbage and a raw beetroot. I'm hungry.
It didn't feed your writing.
No, not at all. No, not really. But the first novel, you introduced me with The House Fell on Her Head. You introduced me to print on demand through Amazon. I'd never heard of it. And I've been trying to get my book published. And it was actually thanks to you that I did actually publish with Amazon. Otherwise, I'd still be here now.
I'm pleased pleased you did that, because it's super. I really enjoyed that, and I'm still waiting for the sequel.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
do you know what? It's there's about 30,000 words written, but I keep stopping and starting. I'm moving on to starting a novella and then not completing it.
Yeah,
It's that discipline, isn't it? No, it's.
It is, and and it's. I think while you work, it depends. Because for me, I spent, as I said, 30 years in the probation service, and that took all my creativity.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise it till later. Why have I got no creative energy left at the weekends to write this novel? I wanted to write it for years and years, but actually, working with offenders and trying to find creative ways of, changing behaviours and changing patterns and so on, and it does use up all your creative energies. I think some people. I had a colleague who wrote some marvelous books while he was working as a probation officer. Sadly, he died shortly after he retired. And he had a lot of more books in him. But it did make me think. Just get on with it. Just get on with his early death. I thought just do it, and that was one of the reasons why when I'd written the novel, I thought I'm just going to get it out there. On Amazon, because it's you can just spend years going around agents who are quite ageist and trying to find a publisher and so on. A marvelous publisher with the second book, but with the first one, I thought, no, just get it out there. I just want to tell this story because I so enjoyed writing it. And on the whole, I think people enjoy reading it.
Well, that went to number 1 on the charts, didn't I think? You did a sort of a campaign. I did a campaign.
I did. And it did. I think probably just for one day, but hey,
even so,
it sold really, really well, and it's got some very good reviews. So, and I did, and it's very timely, of course, as we're coming up to Christmas and the anniversary of the Blitz and so on. It's quite timely now, but so people like war stories, don't they? It's the story of a 10-year-old boy, and how he's perceiving all the events around him without actually understanding the significance of them. I think until he's much older, it's an enjoyable. It was an enjoyable write.
I enjoyed reading it.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Move on from you moved from self-publishing with Amazon to Bloodhound Books. How did that come about? Did you have a stint with Cinnamon as well? Did they published a couple of your short stories, didn't they? I think, or an anthology.
Yes. Cinnamon has published a number of my short stories in their anthology, which I think might be out of print now. I'm not sure, or you may still be able to get it on Amazon. But yes, so I did quite a lot of short stories, and Cinnamon took 4 of them for their anthology, and then I self-published again a collection of them, because again I just wanted them to be out there, and I had a number of short stories that won competitions and were printed in magazines and so on, so that was good fun. But then when I'd finished I was drawing close to finishing the second novel. No, I'm lying, actually. I'd done about a third of the second novel, and Muslexia had a competition.
Dyslexia, was that Kate?
Muslexia is it's a magazine, a writing magazine for women who write.
Okay.
MS, Lexia, Muslexia. And I've just taken it for years, and it always has some good stuff in it and lots of submission information. So it's a really good magazine. And they had a competition for the opening chapter. So I sent in the opening chapter and the synopsis and so on, and then kind of forgot about it, and it was Christmas and so on. And then I had an email from them saying, your book's been longlisted for the prize. Can you send us the complete manuscript by the 18th of February? Well, it was then the 7th of February. And I thought, whoops.
Where's my pen?
I thought it was all in rough notes, but only a third of it was written. So I thought, I can miss this opportunity, or I can grasp this opportunity. So I actually went into a room and faced a blank wall for 11 days and just wrote. And I wrote 3,000 words a day. Absolutely non-stop.
That's good going.
Wrapped it up, sent it off,
Yeah.
Having sent it off to them, I thought, oh, now then, it's it's a complete novel. Maybe I should send it somewhere else as well while I'm waiting.
Yeah.
Why not put all your eggs in one basket, or don't put all your eggs in one basket, or whatever. So anyway, spread it around.
Yeah.
So at the same time, a writer that I'd met on an Arvon course. I enjoy doing Arvon courses, and I'd met a writer called Dreda Say Mitchell, no relation, and she'd had a book published by Bloodhound Books. So I thought, oh, just take a punt, send it off to them, and did so. And within 2 days, had a 2-book contract.
Brilliant.
I mean, it was just stunning, the speed at which they moved. And then, having done that, I withdrew from the competition and accepted the contract. And they were so professional. It was just such a treat, Terry, working with a publisher, a small independent publisher based in Cambridge. And the cover design, the editing, it was all so professional, so friendly. And they have a group on Facebook which is very supportive. I mean, the whole thing was a pleasure from beginning to end, really, and they do the marketing. So that was really good, and that was lockdown 1. So this was the February before lockdown 1. So then we went into lockdown 1, and I was editing through that whole, the book through that whole period, and then it came out in August last year.
Really well. 122 reviews you've got for that. Sorry, no, 144. 144.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
do you know, I have to stop looking, because I'm really, it's really interesting, because British readers really seem to like it, and I don't know if it's location or what, but American readers, they don't like it at all. They say things like, oh, I didn't like the end at all, because I don't know what it is. Do American readers they certainly like detailed stories, long stories, and I think they might like it to have a happy ending. I don't know. It doesn't have a happy ending. It has a kind of, and makes you think ending, and a kind of bit of a shock ending. American readers went, oh, I didn't like that. I read it all the way to the end, and then that happened.
That was the last thing she did.
As in the title, but the last thing she did. British readers seem to enjoy it a lot. So, and I did very much enjoy writing it. And actually, have you read it? I don't know if you don't.
I haven't, actually.
Well, what I want to say is, I think you might enjoy it, because one of the characters, Connor, is a scally.
Oh, yeah.
And he writes in the first person, and he tells his story about how he came to get involved in this bungled robbery, and how he came to kidnap the child, and what happened subsequently, and how he ended up, hanging on to the child. And I think from, bearing in mind the character that you have in
Tommy Dwyer,
absolutely. So I think you might enjoy Connor.
It's on my list.
Have a read of it. I know you're a voracious reader, so get it on your list. Get it on your bedside table.
Do you know, since I've been doing these writer chats, my writing to be read list has gone pretty huge. But it's great. You sort of get an extra element of it, when you chat to the writer, like chatting with you now. Now that's going higher on my list, because I've chatted to you, give me some background to it, and you get a feel for it.
Really, I think you'll enjoy reading Connor, and actually, I'll enjoy getting your feedback on what you think of that character. Which in my life, I've met a lot of scallies.
Probation service.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't write about any of them. None of my. I have to be very careful that none of my writing is based on any personal story or character that I've met over the years, which is a bit of a challenge, because I have to kind of check that I'm not doing that, because that's kind of people's privacy. So they're all completely fictional. So I'm always very interested in but obviously I've got that background. So I think I understand how people tick. How a young lad coming out of prison might get sucked into the next robbery, and it might go wrong, and he makes all the wrong decisions and gets himself into a situation, and you know, that kind of thing. Because people say, but why did he do that? Why did he do that? Well, it's what people do, you know, when their back's against the wall and they've got peer group pressure and they've got, you know, nothing else, you know, to no other choices at that moment. It's what they call, in sociology, they call it the invitational edge. And I'm always fascinated by characters who find themselves on that invitational edge. Will they do this? What you know, how will they actually make that decision? So that's a bit of that should come across, I hope, in Connor's story. I'll be pleased to hear what you think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll give you full feedback. Well, as a writer, you sort of elements. You've got to be a psychologist and a sociologist as well. Sort of, you've got to get inside the people's minds, what motivates them.
I think some would say cod psychology when it's a probation officer, isn't it? Because we have a lot of really good training, you know, and we know a lot about what makes people tick. You do have to be very wary of not straying into, you know, kind of psychology, which is somebody else's precinct, you know, and but yes, you do just absorb a lot about how people think and what makes them tick.
Could you switch off on that job? I know I work in IT. I come home, I don't know, I've updated a software application. I can switch off when I come home. But working in the probation services, you must have been seeing some extreme cases. Were you able to do that? You know, automatically switch off when you come home, or were you bringing that with you emotionally?
Yes, I think you do, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wasn't writing much earlier, because writing is something I wanted to do since I was 7 years old. You know, just making a living in that way. If you're really going to do the probation job properly, you know, you are going to kind of embed your creative energies into it, into kind of trying to make a difference. And I mean, I look back now, to be honest, and you know, political comment coming up, that kind of, you look back and you think the probation service has changed so much since I left, because the government has destroyed it. Absolutely.
Funding, Is it privatised as well?
It passed its centenary year, celebrated all the work that the probation service had done in 100 years, and then got completely destroyed. You know, so everything, people like me, there's thousands of people like me who must be thinking, everything I did for 30 years, just down the pan, you know, in a moment, with, you know, and now they're actually trying to recover it and try and return it to something that they had before, you know. It was just astonishing, the last decade for the probation service, you know. But yeah, so it's a very different job now, and I think that it's probably a bit more Americanized and a bit more, you know, civil servants and tick boxing and so on. But certainly in the years I was in, it was very much about focused on the offending behaviour, you know, and
to stop the offending, the reoffending.
Absolutely, and trying to impact on that. So it did have kind of sociological kind of aspect to it, because it was trying to get people to continue to function within their community without resorting to offending, you know. So to keep themselves safe as much as keeping everybody else safe, keeping the, you know, to keep them safe, to keep victims safe, if you see what I mean.
Protecting society. Can I just go back to something you said earlier? I'm changing the subject slightly. You mentioned that you wanted to be a writer as a child. Were you accused once by a teacher of plagiarising a story that you wrote? So did you pinch that from somebody else?
No, that was me. I wonder where that came from. I must have shared that with you at over a pork pie at Llandudno Junction. I was actually, because I used to write, as I say, I used to write as a child, and it wasn't something that, because we lived on a farm and we didn't have time to mess about doing that kind of thing. You know, we all had jobs to do, and then it was dark. So, you know, but I did used to write stories, and I remember writing one in secondary school, and the teacher said, she just wrote on it, "I believe this is copied." It wasn't.
You can't write that well.
Well, quite. But what it did was it completely destroyed my confidence in writing stories, you know. So I didn't come back to it until I think probably in my 20s, when I was working in London. with homeless people, and I just wanted to write down what I was seeing, and I was reading books like George Orwell, Down and Out in
Oh
Paris
yeah.
and London, and I really kind of felt that kind of Orwellian aspect of London, and that made me want to kind of write again. So I started scribbling a bit, but as I say, didn't do anything with it until I was much, much older. But I have written a story based on those years. It's a kind of reverse narrative.
Oh yeah. It's a short story, is it?
Yeah, it's a short story, and it's called Hungarian Rhapsody, and it's in the Cinnamon collection, and it's based on, you see somebody, a down and out, sitting on a linen hamper outside a posh restaurant, and you kind of think, how did that happen? How did she get there? A bit of an exchange with this person, maybe give them a few coins, and you think, how did she get there? What's her story? And so it goes into a reverse narrative and winds back and back and back until we find out how she became homeless in the first place. So, so that was my kind of homage, if you like, to the homeless women of Soho, who I worked with in London. Yeah.
Do you think it's, well, some people say it's a cliche that some of the most talented writers, or the best-selling authors, they've had a troubled childhood, which they got like a well of stories that they can draw upon.
Yeah. Well, I think probably my well of stories is just life in general. I mean, I've been around. I've been, all over, and done a lot of different jobs and met a lot of people, and mostly probably the probation service. So if you were looking for troubled childhoods, you might say that I was mining other people's troubled childhoods. I have met a lot of people with troubled childhoods, and continue to do so. Well, in my safeguarding role. So the material's there completely. In fact, I probably don't have a lifetime long enough to start to write all the material, do I? And certainly the ideas, just too many ideas for one lifetime, really.
Yeah. Do you see writing your stories as a way of sort of exercising? I think I asked earlier, did you bring the work home with you? A way of getting that out of your system, to drawing it out to sort of...
No, I do a lot of what ifs. I'm a bit of a pain to have to dinner, really, because it kind of if there's a scenario, I'll just say, oh well, what if this happened? So I'm a very much a what if person, and that's really where I get my ideas from. But I actually find that fiction is a good way to get to sleep at night. You lie in bed kind of thinking about kind of stuff. And it's quite hard to get to sleep because it's real stuff. Actually, if you turn that into a kind of what if and start to kind of have a sort of fictional ideas about it and fantasize about it,
not keep you awake all night. Take you down different million different paths. And
absolutely. I'm very, very much a what if person, and I write it down. So I've got lots of notebooks. So bearing in mind the material I've got, the ideas I've got, I'm not really a very productive writer, am I? I should really be writing a lot more.
I don't know. I'm looking at your Amazon page now. I can see 4 books staring back at me. You're working your current work in progress, The Green-Eyed Boy. What's this about?
Well, I need to change that, actually, because it's been retitled. It is The Last Thing She Did. So when you look at the Amazon page and it says, I'm currently working on Green-Eyed Boy, it's done. It's called, it changed its title. It's The Last Thing She Did. I'm trying to get into that Amazon page to just change that little bit, actually. But I am working on the next one, which is called He Saw What She Did.
There's a sequel.
That's in no, completely different story. Woman lifer, she's serving life for killing her husband. She escapes in order to prove her innocence. So even though her 10-year-old son saw her do it. So that's your blurb.
Yeah, that's a great premise. This with Bloodhound Books as well.
That hopefully will be published by Bloodhound.
Okay.
Yeah, so that might be the second book of the 2-book deal with Bloodhound.
Okay.
And I've just started, so that's up for a rewrite at the moment. There are some bits of that are problematic, so I'm going through it and editing it.
Okay.
And then I've started on the next book, which is actually a time slip, which is not. It's out of my genre. It's not a crime necessarily.
Science fiction, is it?
It's historical. It is a bit of science fiction. It's a time slip in that a man kind of who becomes obsessed with his local history group, retires and joins his local history group, becomes obsessed, and ends up slipping back into the Civil War. So that's which is quite near here, near where I live. There's a site that is Civil War, so that's kind of partly based in fact and but mostly fictional. Nothing to do with the fact that when we moved here, my partner got involved with the local history group and
well, have you? I know. Well, with the publisher, with Bloodhound Books, that I've looked on their website today. It seems to have the shortest submission time. It says we'll get back to you within 3 weeks. Every other publisher, they say 3 months at least.
No, they're really incredibly efficient, and they mostly work virtually. But yeah, they are very, very efficient. And as I say, they came back to me. Actually, they came back to me in 2 days and said, we're interested in seeing the whole manuscript. So I sent the whole manuscript, and they were back to me in 7 days. Within 7 days of, so within 7 days, I'd got the contract. They are incredibly fast, and I think they know quite quickly if this is the sort of story that they can champion. Or not, so
That's brilliant. Is there any sign of any other, I don't know, like film or television rights on the go? I know they mentioned that on their website. They have close contacts, in the media industry.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's the hope for every writer, really, isn't it? I suppose
they were very quick to get. The last thing she did is out on audiobook.
I saw that. Did they arrange all that?
Yeah. They do all of that, and I actually got an advance for that, so that was really nice. I mean, I do think that I don't know what you think when you've read The Last Thing She Did, but I do think it lends itself really well
television series
to a Netflix series.
Exactly.
So I can see it absolutely as a 3-parter or 4-parter even. And absolutely. So I should very much like to pursue that.
Have you got an agent, or is you just with the publisher?
No. And actually, I think it's quite hard to get an agent. As I said before, I think they're quite ageist. I think what they want is somebody that they can stick with for a decade or something. A career. Well, I mean, we are career writers, you and I. We will carry on writing for the next 10 years, but I think it's quite hard for agents to see that. But so I'm very happy to work directly with independent publishers. Having said that, Bloodhound has been bought out recently by a very large American company, Open Road Media, and I mean, waiting to see how that works out. At the moment, it means that my books are now available, or that The Last Thing She Did is now available on a number of different platforms like Kobo, Google Play, as well as Amazon. And you can actually order my book or buy it from Waterstones or any of the main.
Saw that today, yeah. One final question, Kate. What advice would you give to aspiring writers, people who think, I've got a story in my head, but one day I'll write it?
One day I'll write it. Well, what I would say to people who say one day I'll write it is just, get it down in note form, write some notes, because you can commit yourself. So get some notes, get something down on a piece of paper. It'll be rubbish. Don't matter. It's just for yourself. Nobody's going to see it. Just get that idea written down roughly, draw it, do anything you want with it, and just put it somewhere where you keep seeing it.
Yeah.
You know, so that, and keep adding to it, and you don't have to sit down and start once upon a time on day one. Just, you know, write diagrams, do a mind map, do whatever you want, but just get it down on paper in very rough form, and you will find it will start like mushrooms. It will start to grow and develop. To people who have written, I get this a lot, Terry, you do too, I guess. I've written a novel. How can I get it published? And I would say, well, have you edited it? Have you had it? Oh, yeah, my partner's looked at it. Well, that's no good, is it?
No, not at all.
You know, you actually need to invest in professional editing. Very, very fierce about editing. And people think one of the problems about Amazon self-publishing is that I think it gives the idea that you can just write it and bang it on Amazon and get it published, you know. And you can't. You've absolutely got to go through the same process that a publisher would go through. You have to get it professionally edited. Because if somebody reads the first, you know, and your commas are all over the place, you're not going to
right off. Going to stop reading, aren't they?
Yeah, so you get a lot of crap, to be honest, on Amazon, where people have just, they might have a good story, but they've lost it because they've not edited it, you know. You know, it's tough if, for example, you're dyslexic, for example, you've got to pay for that professional editing. You've got a
pair of eyes on it.
You need to tell it. Professional editing, professional cover design, you know, really just give yourself that respect as an author to do the very best job you can before you self-publish it on Amazon, you know, and get another opinion, get somebody to do a structural review of it. Does it all hang together properly? Do a few readers that you're not related to. You know, I think you've got to actually mirror the process that publishers have in terms of taking your book seriously and trying to do the best job you can with it. So that's for people who say, oh, I've done a novel, what should I do next? You know, really?
No, you helped me. I think my book had gone through professional editing, and you spotted a couple of glaring errors. I think I had a dog whelping in pain. I should have been yelping in pain.
I see what you mean.
I had to go and look that up. There's a dog giving birth.
We all do it. People, but you know, I mean that's happened in my book as well. You know, I had a typo, which hopefully now I've corrected.
They become invisible to yourself, don't they? As you're writing, you need that fresh pair of eyes, don't you, to point that out?
You do need fresh eyes, yes. And it should not be somebody who is a friend or you're related to. I think if you put out a call on Facebook and say, I'm looking for some beta readers, a couple of beta readers for my book, you know, and just be honest, and you know, people will come forward because some people like to do that. You know, and then when you've got it to the best possible state you can, then pay for a professional edit. You know, and cover design, and you know, the very best job you can. And look at other books, at professionally published books. Go and walk around a bookshop and see what other people have done. But one of the things that happens, for example, you know, a lot of people get books published. I'll just give you an example of the quality. I mean, this is Amazon self-published. The House Fell on Its Head.
That's the copy I've got. A
little bit shiny, a little bit too shiny, and I asked
gloss cover. You asked for a matte cover.
I always order a matte cover, but still a little bit shiny. One of the problems is that Amazon, because they print books really fast, they do it on laser print, is they print the cover at the same time as the inner. And so what you end up with is the cover. Can you see it's already starting to lift? Yeah. And when you have several of them there, that can look a bit cheap. So you have to be careful of that. Whereas a professionally published book, perfect. Look at that.
Yeah, that is quality. Yeah, you can see that.
Nice.
You get what you pay for, don't you? I know one guy wrote to me, contacted me on Twitter. He'd ordered my book, and in the opening chapter was a recipe for cooking hamburgers. And he said, "Terry, you know, I'm trying to make sense of this. Where does it come into the story?" And it was a misprint by Amazon. You know, one in a million.
Oh my!
You don't get a reply when you write to Mr. Amazon and say, "Hey, Mr. Amazon, there's."
No.
You wait 3 days and a bot.
That's weird.
It was weird.
But I think that's and that preview copy as well. Getting a preview copy. I met a self-published author just very recently, and she said, "Oh, I just was in the end. I haven't got the time to do any more on this. I just thought I'd get it published." I thought that's not where you should be. Really. Just edit it within an inch of its life.
It's a professional way to do it.
Because it's respecting your craft, isn't it?
Sure.
And it's the same when I do professional writing. I always ask people to go through it and check, and for typos and things, because I'm not the best person to do that. I think, on my deathbed, what will I regret doing? Will I regret that I didn't work harder for the probation service? Or will I regret not spending more time with my family? Yes.
Easy choice, easy one.
Or will I regret not finishing that novel? Yes. What will your last thoughts be? Oh, I wish I'd spent more time
in the office.
At the office.
Kate, on that note, I think Zoom's going to cut me off in a minute.
It's good to see you, and don't forget that pork pie when
it's one on the post.
When I hove into view to the Everyman Theatre or something, I'll give you a shout.
Okay.
And,
Well, I'm looking forward to reading the last thing she did as well, and I'll give you the feedback on that. Well, let's keep in touch anyway, Kate. But for now, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks ever so much, Terry. Thanks, been good talking to you.